Yes, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's a day of the experts, so we expect a lot. Probably you expect a lot from the experts here, but the experts expect a lot from you as well, because in the end, you're going to do what needs to be done. Let me remind you of the session that you're now in. It's called Re-engineering the System. Re-engineering, it sounds like a lot of hard work, and usually it is. So why? So during this session, we'll talk about the reason why do we need to rearrange and re-engineer things, and how could we do it? So now within 1.5 hours, when you leave the room, I'm sure you go home and saying, now I know why we need to re-engineer it, and I know how to do it, or where to start. So that's the goal of our panel session. So my name is Huub Janssen. For most of it, it's difficult to pronounce, but if you call me Umberto, it's fine. I'll respond to that as well. AI, development of AI is speeding up very quickly. It's accelerating, and it will continue. We're just at the beginning. We're just at the first year of really speeding up with the developments of generative AI, and that will continue for the next years. So if you think a big thing is happening, it's just the beginning. And why is it so effective and important? When we started as humans with the Industrial Revolution, we were able for the first time to really, on a large scale, change energy into power, physical power, horsepower. And what you can learn from that situation is that the companies and the countries that were best able to convert energy into power, they were the ones with the most welfare, but also the most power. Now we're going into the AI revolution, and for the first time we're really able to transfer, to convert energy into cognition, into intelligence. And again, probably the same things will happen. The companies and the countries that are best able to convert energy into intelligence and cognition will probably have the most power and the most welfare. And that's not what you want. You want it more distributed, but how are we going to do it? Crucial in that respect, at least this time we know what's going to happen, and we're all here in this room to discuss and debate it. And the first thing we need, and that's where a lot of discussions went on, legislation, guidelines, guide rails to protect ourselves from harm and inequalities. And it's not about just legislation. First we're discussing that, but after that there comes more. And like Gabriella Ramos said yesterday, it's about implementation, implementation, implementation. So that's what we're going to talk about, implementation. What do we need to, in order to get it trustworthy, the AI, and fair? We need to build the ecosystem of trust. And it's not really very different than cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, there is an ecosystem of trust. So you have legislation, you have technical standards, you have supervision, you have conformity assessment bodies, you have advisory and consultancy agencies, and the whole, and education, all those building blocks together form an ecosystem of trust. And that's what we need to build here as well. And for my opening speech, I would like to focus on the building block of supervision and enforcement, but because I'm working for the Dutch Competent Authority on the digital infrastructure. We supervise AI, also based on current legislation. So you don't always need new legislation. If there's AI in a medical device, it's usually under regulation for medical devices, or it's in telecom infra, it's already there. So it's not necessary to wait with supervising AI until there is specific legislation. When it comes to enforcement, it's all about the art of supervision. And that's really a very new topic. Nobody really does it at the moment. How are you really going to look at an AI and think, is it okay or is it not okay? So it's a completely new green field. So there is in the discussion on the art of supervision, no global north or global south, global east or global west. We're all at the same situation, and we all need to learn from each other. We're all equal in this respect, and that's why I'm happy that we have the opportunity here to discuss it in this setting. And I see Gabriella nodding, so. So also for us, we thought, how are we going to do this? We had no idea. It's never been done before. So we wanted to try to get people to advise us. Unfortunately, teacher reform was willing to finance it, and UNESCO was willing to help us in this space, in this green field of the art of supervising AI. And Nathalie will tell you more about the project later on. So that's the reason why we need to rearrange, re-engineer, and just I want to give you some practical cases and advice that we have until now. As the Slovenian Deputy Prime Minister yesterday said, AI came overnight. Suddenly it's there. Things go very fast, and in order to supervise, you need to be proactive. You can't wait until it's there and then start thinking, how are we going to supervise it? You really need to start in advance. If you have some idea of what's going to happen, just start doing it. So proactive is key. You can't do it alone. So in the Netherlands, we started with already a few years ago with a working group of all the competent authorities that all said, we need to supervise AI in our own domain. And nobody knew how to do it. So we worked together, we started forming a working group, and it got broader and broader, and it's just helping each other in the art of supervising AI. And now, due to the AI Act, we really need to totally rearrange the whole field of supervising and enforcement. It needs to be changed, and together with the data protection officer, we're working together to steer it in a different way, and we don't know where we're going, but we know that we need to do something, so we're just doing it. The same goes on a European level. We need to work in Europe as well, so already 3 years ago we started with the European Working Group to collaborate and to learn from each other. And within this working group of competent authorities, there were all kind of different organizations because AI is in everything, so nobody knew who should supervise AI. And you can't have one supervisor supervising AI because you need to supervise it in the context. So AI in a medical device, you really need to see the impact in a medical device. When it's in telecom, you really need to see it in the context. So you see all different kind of competent authorities in the European Working Group, and that's okay. We're just starting with everybody who's there, and we take it from there. And it's important to tell you that the working groups don't exist. Not formally. It's never been institutionalized. We just started doing. Speed is everything in this project. The AI goes very fast, the impact comes very fast, so you, as competent authorities and as governments, you really need to act fast, and if you want to formalize and institutionalize, which is sometimes necessary for the long run, but you just need to get started. And it's learning by doing. So you just start and doing and be flexible. If you take a certain approach and it doesn't work, just adapt. That's why you don't want to formalize too much because it might hinder you in the way you're going. I've got 1 minute, I see. That's good. So what is important, so I give you a few examples of the things that we, starting this process on how to supervise AI, what we came across. But there are so many questions we still have. And I would like for myself and for you to leave the room with more answers than questions. So I'm really happy with this panel because these are the real experts. They all studied for it. They all researched it. So I would like to give the microphone now to the moderator, Meindert, and you can take it away. Thank you.
I've been told this is a record. We have more experts on the stage than in the room, but there might be some contention here. It's the magical chairs. We have to switch chairs because this last chair was, of course, already taken by the most important person in this room. But let's start where Huub left. You mentioned we are not the experts, Huub. We just take regulation and put it into practice. That's what we do. But of course, the real experts here in this panel, they do know. They know. You know? We need to get this information from them. These are the people, we need to pick their brains. And I would like to start with the lead experts on the RAMs. And any of you would like to maybe give an introduction about the RAMs, because it has been so many times in this conference being talked about the RAM, but what was it for you? Maybe Saida? I do start with the most difficult person, because she will be speaking in French. But yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I am delighted really to be here. I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to thank UNESCO and Slovenia for inviting me. I am very, very happy to be here indeed, because it makes it possible for me to participate in a global forum regarding the ethics of AI. Usually it's just AI, and today it's the ethics of AI, which means it's a unique opportunity for me. And I'm happy to be here also because since I've arrived, I have been given to meet inspiring and inspired spirits and souls, and it's a learning process for me, and it's very important. And since yesterday, we have been talking about how we can best learn from one another, and I do believe that AI is something that makes it necessary for us to collaborate more than ever, to listen to each other more than ever, and to understand each other more than ever. And we had a chat about it, actually. Maybe I can go back to that, go back to lessons that I learned while working on the RAM in Morocco. I think maybe it's important for me to mention what I would do differently now, knowing what I know, and maybe I can talk about the points regarding which, experts that are going to become responsible for the deployment of this methodology in their own country, what those experts should, in my humble opinion, watch out for, what they could do more, what they need to pay attention to as far as deploying RAM in their own country is concerned. I think it's essential to understand, and it took a while for me, but I think it's essential to understand the link, the relationship between the recommendation on the ethics of AI and the methodology, and how to best make all of this operational, knowing that the bond or the cement or the link is indeed always ethics. Applied ethics. Ethics as applied to artificial intelligence. I believe that the recommendation, as we all know, goes beyond just listing things. And I think that's very important because it is followed by that tool, which is a very operational tool. And that tool makes it possible for us to go from a set of principles, so 10 principles plus 4 values, and translate this into, an assessment of your readiness. We have very different industries and sectors that are mentioned, and it is recommended that they should be the focus of some attention because they are priority sectors. And I think the readiness assessment makes it possible for us to pinpoint areas where we need to be particularly cautious. And I think I'm nearly done. Sorry. Or do I not have any more time? Okay, so just one point, basically. Like, my advice would be that in terms of what has to be done, you need to both build and deconstruct. From a semantic and lexicological perspective, words matter in this context. And when you're faced with stakeholders, there's a discrepancy there. We will face, for example, the question of singularity, consciousness, ego. Someone will tell you, what about the discussion or the interview between Blake Lemoine and Lambda? What about artificial intelligence? You know, the language thereof, I think, in the semantic deconstruction is extremely important.
Thank you, thank you. I almost want to directly go to the Alan Turing Institute, and I will. Yeah, you follow this as a native French, right? But yeah, it goes everywhere. How do you cope with that? Do we need to just re-engineer everything?
I mean, I think
I have to speak in the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. That's better. Thank you. Thank you. So the question was, so many topics were brought into this discussion that my question is, do we really need to re-engineer everything? The first things to come to mind is the Alan Turing Institute. So I'd love to put the question over there.
I think it's for me, it's a question of starting points, right? I think that when we think about operationalizing ethical principles and values, we need to think of more than just kind of dropping in governance mechanisms. So the past few years, we've seen a lot of different auditing frameworks, documentation frameworks, et cetera. But really, I think the starting point for re-engineering governance and AI ethics is cultural transformation, right? So we, in a sense, need to think before the documentation. We need to think about how do you build reflective anticipation and a critical awareness of the kind of socio-technical dynamics of the design, development, and deployment of AI systems. How do you think of these practices as social practices which draw in ethical and moral responsibility? And so I think that for me, the really re-engineering part of it comes with the kind of transformation of attitudes among the kind of builders and procurers of the systems.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. So you do add another layer. Huub was the original goals, of course, that we're trying to narrow it down. So I'm gonna try to force the experts here to. I know you want to broaden up, and that's what we're doing for the past 1.5 days, or for the people who are day zero for 2.5 days already. Maybe to make it broader and make it a little bit smaller, we have a panelist here was originally said that she is responsible for the RAM for half of Africa. Maybe you will give maybe just a smaller, get it all together a little bit. What is the most important to re-engineering here, Quito?
Thank you. I'm not responsible for half of Africa, just for Namibia, but thank you very much. I think for me and my experience with the RAM is that it was important to take stock of what is already happening and what is like forming connections between what is happening in different sectors. And I think identifying what is happening allows us to address the most important question, which is what building trust and trustworthiness. And I think part of that is identifying like what responsibilities are there. So looking in those dimensions of like legal, social, cultural, education, scientific, economic, infrastructure, what responsibilities within those dimensions do we need, and who is responsible or who will be responsible for those different dimensions. And in the context of Namibia, where I'm from, I think the most pressing question right now is the data policy that we don't have, and so who's the responsible person for such a bill or policy, and what institutions need to be set up to enforce legislation and so forth. And I don't know if this is narrowing it down, but I think identifying responsibilities and who's responsible sets the stage for a very important aspect of trust, which is accountability. So we don't only want to have responsible AI, we also want builders, systems, governments to be accountable for harm caused or inequalities or inequities that they perpetuate, but also to ensure that people have agency. I mean, I think a lot of people spoke about awareness and literacy, and really at the root of awareness and literacy is agency, but allowing that, you know, people, citizens have the adequate critical information to challenge systems, to be able to know when harm is caused to them, but also for policymakers, technologists, activists, civil society, to be able to challenge systems that we have right now that are negatively impacting people. Just the last thing that I want to add is that I think one thing that the experience that I had from working with policymakers in Namibia and really many stakeholders across the country working on these issues is that there is a very limited awareness of the shift that has happened in our economic models. I think previously we've had a very, you know, you have capital starting capital. It's very clear where that comes from, but now our data is all part of that, you know, infrastructure or that so-called like input that contributes to the profit. And so there's a lack of awareness of the changing or the changes in the economic models that around AI and data. That's all.
Well,
sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, not fully narrowing it down, I feel, but I'll take something very small from there. Yeah, somebody really would like to talk about data, I guess, right, from Brazil, because you mentioned that data is essential, and I think you want to add something to that, I think, or strengthen this point.
Yes. Regarding the run, one of our challenges, it was to collect the data. Brazil has a lot of data, and this data appears in the very fragmented environment. Like you have data in different ministries with a different kind of semantics involved, and some data are well codified, but other data do not have this codification adequate, and also other data are also missing. Like the number of experts in the AI domain, for instance, that focus on ethics. And as you know, data is essential for the elaboration of a public policy and also to foster governance. And regarding specifically to the data, it's necessary not only the data, but to have a proper codification to enable exchange among different experts in different segments of the society, and also to implement a computational system that can talk to each other. This is a very important challenge faced not only by this community, but also for the global community. But we need to start this discussion and this elaboration. And we have very good examples in the technical community, like some ontological standard for the development of ethically driven robotics automation system elaborated in the context of the P7007 series by IEEE. So data is essential. It's very important to have a proper format to enable a precise communication among the different stakeholders and also the communication among systems. So that will endow the system with interoperability that is necessary and well discussed during the whole conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Edson. This makes it a very clear, very tangible item you're mentioning here. So I'm a little bit afraid to give the next word to Hans, knowing Hans. Thank you. Can you elaborate on this while staying narrow?
Yes. No, I'll first like to echo David here with the cultural approach, the cultural shift. And I think it's not about re-engineering. It's a shift for us. We are the competent authority for digital infrastructure, Post and Telecom Authority. So we're used to supervised network cables, network systems, radio communication systems, hardware. But now with the new legislation, with the digital society, we are going up in that ecosystem, in that value chain. And it's not just the AI Act, it's the Digital Services Act, it's the Data Governance Act that we are preparing for. So it's a wider approach that we have to learn. And I think we have to learn fast as the whole society. But in that terms, we are looking at to train, educate courses like the Alan Turing Institute, others, to make sure that we in our organization are prepared for that future and can understand it better from that broader perspective. So that's the first part. I'll be back. No, but I think that's a key point that you turned out. It's not just re-engineer, it's a shift, I think.
Okay, so what Huub said was not true, right? We agree with this. Thank you. I would like to ask the former Undersecretary for Economics and Small Enterprises, Julio Alberto, whether you also think it's a cultural shift.
Absolutely. As in any socio-technical system, what drives the evolution of technology is not technology itself or its underlying properties. It's not the economic consequences of that technology. It's mostly about social aspects, cognitive aspects, what we understand about the technology and how that technology shifts power structures within society. So what we did when I was also the lead of the RAM in Chile, we saw the RAM not only as an opportunity to take a stock of what's happening in the country, but also as an opportunity to engage in a broader societal discussions on what do we want to do with this type of technology. So we organize different roundtables throughout the country to try to figure out, okay, what are the different imaginaries that people are thinking about when they speak about AI? And to avoid being locked in the present, we conducted a backcasting methodology in which we asked participants to think, in the future, year 2050, what does artificial intelligence mean for how government works, for democracy, for the future of work, for new business creation? And that opened up a lot of opportunities on new visions on how this could enable us to achieve better development, juster societies, better work, more efficient state. And from that discussion that's not anchored in the present, we were able to have a more informed discussion on, okay, so how can we get to those desired future scenarios and avoid the negative ones? Because right now, if you only figure out legislation when there are a lot of threats and fears, well, fear chokes creativity. And that will not enable us as a society a better use of this fundamental general purpose technology that will affect different sectors of the economy. So that's what we did, and it was a really good opportunity to imagine future scenarios for the country.
Beautifully in time as well. Thank you. Thank you. So we do have two main points. I think we have data and culture shift. I think nobody can disagree that these are very important parts. Now, to just be clear, I would like to ask Samo Zorc, coordinator of the National AI Program, Ministry of Digital Transformation from Slovenia, to ask your unique perspective, as what you said. Slovenia is just one of the smaller countries.
Yes.
How do you see that?
Thank you very much. It was interesting to hear